Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So today I have the honor of interviewing someone who I've come across quite sometimes on Twitter. And the reason why I came across your Twitter is because you have fantastic Rocket Lab analysis, and I have seen many Rocket Lab creators retweet you and interact with you. And do you have any other social media than Twitter?
No, actually not.
Okay. So today is the unveiling of the mysterious Tim_X94 from from Twitter.
Yes,
Uh,
I guess so.
yes. So anybody who wants to check out your Twitter, we have the handle in your name over there. And please tell us about yourself. Who are you? Where do you come from? And why do you like Rocket Lab so much?
Uh, well, before I start with all of this, Vince, thanks for inviting me on the channel. Appreciate it. So to start with the basics, my name is Tim. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm maybe in terms of personal life, I'm married. Also expecting a baby girl in June, so all very exciting stuff.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And maybe as a so on a professional basis, I work as an auditor. Before I worked at the Big Four audit firm, so at Price Waterhouse. I'm not sure if you know it. It doesn't even matter. But that's a bit my background. So I would say my background is a lot of reading financial statements. Um,
Makes sense. Makes sense now.
yes, yeah. But the thing with you would assume that auditors would be very good stock investors, but they're not because we're always looking backwards. Well,
Yeah.
everyone is always looking forward.
Yeah. It's so interesting. When I started investing, like I wanted to understand how you do DCF and all this. And I put a lot of focus on this. And then I found out with experience that people who only focus on that, they kind of miss the big picture because they're like driving a car looking at the rear view mirror. But it's
Yes,
still
tricky.
very, yeah, but it's still very useful knowledge because if you are, if you understand business and you understand how these things work, then you can see, then you can basically predict the future because you will see that, yeah, this is how this will affect the PNL and the DCF, and then yeah. But it's surprisingly little auditors who think like that.
Yes, yeah. I guess you also have to have a certain mindset to become an become an auditor, and that's actually the opposite, I guess, of something like investing in Rocket Lab. Auditors are used to taking very little risk, and I guess about investing, it's all about taking calculated risks.
Yeah. Cool. So how long have you been investing, and what are your favorite stocks or biggest positions?
I think I started investing actually 7 years ago. That's actually the same time around the same time when I started working. So the
Hmm?
first couple of months I was like earning money and then spending all the money, and then after those couple of months I was like, yeah, putting in so much hard work, but nothing stays left for Tim. So then I did some research, reading some books like Think and Grow Rich, The Millionaire Next Door, and I think the most important one, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I started to get a bit of more sense of yeah, how to handle your own finance as well. And that in combination, I always had a curiosity for finance, of course, but also for getting to know companies. And that's how I got into investing. And then I started out the most boring way possible, and that was with ETFs. Uh,
Okay.
so the first thing I was very focused on just putting money in the stock account and then letting it accumulate over time. But then I think I did that for 1 year, and then um, yeah, I was thinking by myself, there must be another way. And then I got little bit more interested, I guess, in the workings of the stock market, because although I have an experience in background in finance, that doesn't necessarily mean you know everything about the stock market and how that works and stuff like that. So I did a lot of a lot of learnings I had to do, and then I predominantly, I guess, until 2021, I invested in mostly software as a service companies like CrowdStrike, Datadog, Cloudflare, Snowflake, that type of companies. Then they went sky high basically in 2021. Then I got slightly burned in 2022, but I think I got still out with a reasonable profit. But then I was like, now it all makes more sense. But then I just had a gut feeling like, not these companies. They are, some of them they are very interesting, but are they really adding value? And then I think Alex Karp of Palantir, he always said like they take you out for steak dinners, right?
Yeah.
So I felt that my portfolio consisted of too many stocks where the sales team just takes out the clients for steak dinners. So I tried to really realign the portfolio a bit there. So maybe to cut a bit to the chase, my biggest positions today is Rocket Lab and Palantir, and then with some distance position in Tesla.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm also invested in Nvidia, CrowdStrike, and Microsoft. But
Okay.
that sounds maybe like a safe portfolio, but I would say the weight is more in the top 3 positions.
Okay. Okay. How much of the weight is in the top 3?
I
If
think
I
I don't know the number on top of my head, but I would say like 70%, something like that. Yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I like portfolios, when you have conviction and research and then you go into a few stocks. So question, what is, if you're comfortable disclosing, what is your cost basis on Palantir?
Current cost basis, I think it's in the $17. So I was not definitely one of the early people who saw this right at $6 to $7. I was not that type of a genius, but I think I just saw it a couple of months before the Wall Street saw it, and then was able to get in with a decent position.
Right, cool. I mean, it's not bad, and I mean, I think that the stock is going to go a lot higher with time from where it is today. So it's going to be, a very, very good position. And on Rocket Lab, what is your cost basis, if I might ask?
I think it's 470 now, but it keeps changing because I keep buying on the dips.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. I mean, it's really funny. I didn't know this about you, but our portfolios are very, very similar. I have like Palantir and Rocket Lab, like 50-50. And the reason why I have it is because I keep sending money to the broker account, and then I buy, like, I don't diversify for diversification's sake. And I have enough of Rocket Lab now, and I'm a bit cash poor right now. So the next one that I would want to buy is Tesla. So so we have a very, very similar portfolio. So that's an interesting point. So how did you meet Rocket Lab, and tell us a little bit your story about Rocket Lab?
Yeah, so I was first into Palantir, of course. So before that, I only joined Twitter on, I think, October 23. So before that, I was not even on Twitter. But I started noticing that there are a lot of good content creators on Palantir on Twitter. So I was like interested in their content, and then I made a Twitter account for that. Then I started following them on Twitter, getting information, because that's basically the same. What I do for Rocket Lab is also what I do for Palantir. I only don't share a lot of the stuff that I do because I think, the Palantir is very well covered on Twitter. I'm not sure if I can even offer insights beyond what everyone is already looking at. So yeah, those are Sorry, what was the question?
So how did you come across Rocket
Oh
Lab?
yeah. And what the funny thing is, it was actually you, Vince, because of course you were also invested in Palantir. But what you do, you can on Twitter, you can put on these dollar hashtags and then the stock code, right? And then I got some messages from you about Palantir, so I started following your account somehow, and then I saw one other guy. I was like, these guys are crazy investing in space. and then it was like I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later, there was another guy, which is Matt, your co-host. He was like, yeah, we need to wake Vince for this launch because it was so successful. Yeah. I was like, these guys are crazy, like investing in space, putting so much money in. And then I started looking into it myself, and then it was clearly a lot different than I expected. So actually, you're the reason I got, you notified me of Rocket Lab on Twitter.
Oh, thank you. I had no idea. Now I have a lot of weight on my shoulders that it has to go well.
yeah, exactly.
Cool. And yeah, what is your, because you have very interesting analysis points on Rocket Lab. So I want to go into like a few details, but I was thinking first maybe we could start like, what makes you so bullish about the company? Like, what is it that you like with the company?
There's a lot to cover there. maybe on very high level, I really like the management team. Of course, the founder, who's been covered by a lot of people already, but also the CFO, Adam Spice, and also the lower management. If you look on the website, and you can see the full management team, and also on the space system side, they have a lot of they basically have a lot of experience. I think the ex-founder or the ex-CEO of Solero is also now currently the vice president of space systems. And I think they also have Mike Whalen and Walter. They are the ex-founders of Planetary Science Corporation, which does the direction wheels and star trackers. So they have a lot of experience also on the space system side, and they have early employees also in management on the launch side. Like I think the guy, what's his name? Sean O'Donnell. He is employee number 3. You actually, in one of the first videos of the launch, you also see him standing next to Peter Beck when they launched the Atea rocket for the first time.
Wow. So see, I didn't know this. So that's here we can see how deep your research is already from this 10,000 foot view. You're already very, very deep.
Yeah. And then I did some high level research, then did a startup position. And basically, I always take a startup position first, because that really incentivizes me to look into the stock. And then I read Ashley Vance's book about Peter Beck.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to ask you if you read that. Like, okay, yeah. What did you think when you read that book about and that part about Rocket Lab?
Yeah, it really, literally blew my mind.
Yeah.
but I guess, and if you ever want to reread the book by accident, I was also reading Elon Musk's biography at the same time. So I was reading both books on different days. Then if you compare the sections of SpaceX versus Rocket Lab, the early beginnings, in a lot of you see a lot of similarities.
Between
the companies. So that would be a pro tip for me. But basically, what made me bullish about Peter Beck in general is that he really turned his weaknesses into his strength. So he was stuck on on this island, right, in New Zealand. They didn't have an aerospace industry, and yeah, they had no significant VC capital over there in New Zealand. There were no people, basically qualified engineers to help build the rockets, and he also couldn't get them from the United States because due to ITAR that's not possible.
Yeah.
And also as a fun fact, they also had to. He wasn't even technically, I think, able to launch his rockets due to regulatory
Yeah,
issues
yeah, yeah.
between the United States and New Zealand. So he had to sort all of that out against basically all odds. So if the company would have gone bankrupt, in my opinion, it's not financial advice, but that would be the period in which it would happen. But it didn't happen.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And
I also say it many times that what they have accomplished in like all the way up to now, like to do Neutron now, I think it's like, you know, they climbed the Mount Everest, and then now it's like they're coming down, and it's like if they did all that, there's no reason why they can't do what's in front of them.
yeah, exactly. And even I would go as far to say they really, it's a bit cliche, but they turn their weaknesses into strengths. Because now, due to him being on a remote island, he also has a private orbital launch range,
Yeah.
which I think is very undervalued, by the way, in the investor community, having a private spaceport. It's very remote, so yeah, there's not a lot of traffic they need to handle. And also a very underestimated point, I think they have to. I would have to double check my research, but they would have to pay the local community like a 30K launch fee, and I think the US range fees are 1 to 1.5 million. So that's a very big difference on an 8 million rocket.
Wow. Yeah, I even didn't know that. You see?
So whenever someone, I think I also made an article about it. You can compete with the rocket, and also you always see the competition. They always talk about how Electron is either too small or whatever they find a reason, but they never make any comments about the private spaceport they have in Mahia because it's very difficult to replicate and to be competitive with.
Yeah. What's crazy is that that spaceport can launch the most amount of launches. I can't remember how they worded it, but I think Rocket Lab has access to the most amount of launches in any one spaceport on the planet, like even more than SpaceX. Like SpaceX is launching more because they have, in Florida, Vandenberg, and like in different places. But on the possibility to launch, like Rocket Lab is number one, actually.
Yeah, and also maybe to go into that a bit, Cape Canaveral, from everything what I see and hear, it's very congested. It's full. All the current slots are taken. So yeah, even I think currently the only existing launch companies, which we all know, they are either going to make it or fail. There's not room for any new entrants necessarily in the market. Basically the slots are divided, and now the bets are on, and the race is beginning.
Yeah. I also think this that because you have the existing launch companies, like it's so much capital at risk to start a new rocket startup, because if you look at all the newer startups, like almost all the funding is in the 500 to $1 billion range, and when you have, like, meaning that, for example, Firefly, they have gotten, I think, more than $1 billion in funding. No, not Firefly, I'm thinking about
Relativity space, I think.
Yeah, they have gotten more than $1 billion, I think, in funding, and they don't have a working rocket yet, and I feel it's so much capital you put to risk that as a venture capitalist, or as an investor, it just makes more sense to hire a rocket that you know is going to deliver, and then use that rocket to put something up in space. It doesn't make sense to. And I think Adam Spice also mentions this a lot, that they think that the window of new entrants to the market is closing.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe to quickly go back to the point is, and now being in New Zealand, there's a lot of. I think they even started like an aerospace education in Auckland, New Zealand. So all of the top talent from New Zealand, they obviously go work for a rocket lab. So in New Zealand, they have easy access to talent pools, but they're also lower cost than in the United States. So that's
Yeah.
also a structural cost advantage for them. That's why I think you see also where they can production and mission operation control centers. They're also located in New Zealand, which provide them a like I said, a structural cost advantage, which is also attractive. And on the launch port side, I did a lot of digging also because recently Australia signed a TSA with the United States. The TSA is basically a derivative of the ITAR, and basically doesn't. The summary of the agreement is basically Australia wanted to have spaceports, but the United States doesn't want foreigners around U.S. Rocket technology.
Yeah.
So even if the U.S. competition, they would want to start like it says also their own private spaceport in Australia. What they would have to do is they would have to migrate their a big portion of the U.S. staff, operate the range, because local contractors and local employees are not allowed around the rocket. And the benefit Rocket Lab had is that Rocket Lab already started launching rockets before even the TSA was signed between the countries. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that exactly works, but I can only, since they were basically there already launching, and then the rules were being made. And Rocket Lab is also a very strategic company for New Zealand. They must have gotten some nice working relationships there. So that's also a regulatory mode, which I think, covers them in that case.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and I'm just curious on the valuation of the company because, like we know that they have the space launch or the rocket section of the company. Then you have the space systems section of the company, and then many times they talk about that they want to have their own assets in space, and I have not been able to put that in my models, the space assets. So all of my models are basically based on their rocket launches and space systems part. And I'm just curious, like, how do you value this company? What do you assign to these different sections? Do you assign any value to the space assets? And just curious on your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I guess if you do discounted cash flow analysis, you always are focused on the outcome of it and then compare it against the stock price. And then you think, oh, well, maybe, oh, it's very low currently. Oh, maybe I forgot this revenue or this development. Or with Rocket Lab, you don't even have to, think about the space applications to already see that,
Yeah.
in my opinion, personally, that the company is quite undervalued. And actually, Rocket Lab is, I would say, a relatively easy company to follow because a lot of the launches are public. The amount of revenue per launch. A lot of the government contracts are also very public events. So the SDA awards, nationals, and SSL. It's all very, very public. If you do the research, you can, I think, get an edge there. But yeah, basically my model, I think I even have it on my Twitter. It says like, let me quickly double check before I say something wrong.
Yeah.
It's a 11.5. It says per year end 2024. But I guess it would surprise me if the stock price at the end of the year, assuming Neutron is on track for launching in 2025, will not be above $7. I think that would be unlikely. But again, the current share price is also unlikely, so I'm not 100%
Yeah, it's
sure on that.
it's it's humbling, the current share price, because there is always this, like, like I haven't been, 20, 30 years on the market. And then, you have like ideas and you see like, okay, this price cannot go lower. Like when it was at $5, and like we went to six something after the SDA contract. And then we came down to five. And I was like, there's no way it can go lower than than five. And I was writing like put options, or like I was selling put options, meaning like I would earn money if we stay at five or go higher, right? And then we came down to four, and I'm like, it's unbelievable. It's yeah, but the market can be irrational longer than you can stay solvent, as the saying goes. And yeah,
That's
it's
very true. But
yes,
I think for investors currently, I think the long-term support here for 1.5 years is about 3.70 or something.
yeah,
So I think I didn't even check the stock price today, but I think it's close to the $4 range.
yeah,
So yeah, of course, each stock can go to zero. Uh, never discount
yeah, yeah,
never discount that theoretically, but I would say with a stock this undervalued, with long-term support at 370,
yeah.
if you
It's a very safe place to buy. We can like, if you're buying now, you're not really taking a lot of risk.
only the opportunity costs, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree with you. Like the biggest risk is that 2 or 3 years from now, for some unbelievable reason, we will still be at four. And I'm okay with that because I feel that I still took a bet that was, as you said, like it was a calculated risk and it was such a high risk reward that it was still like a good bet.
Yeah, but for me, it really doesn't feel like I'm betting, the house on this. It's going to the moon or it's zero. No, I think currently and that's why I really like Rocket Lab. If it doesn't work out, I'll probably have my entry money back and miss opportunity cost. And if it does work out, well, then then we're starting to make some
Yeah.
good some good money.
Ah, good. Okay, so if I understand correctly, then you also don't give any value to the space assets section. So you're saying it's worth 11 something per your calculations based on the launch and the space systems.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, awesome.
uh, yeah.
Did you see the last interview with Adam Spice when he was with the, what was the name of the conference? This like the last conference that he was on, and him
Rod MKM.
yeah, that one, where he actually mentioned that they're not going to go into the internet. They will do something else, and there is space applications where you can have a few tens of satellites or maybe like a low hundreds, and you don't need like thousands like for the internet to work. And I was thinking, wow, like yeah, like that is actually something that you can model, because we know that they need the Neutron for that. I wanted to just ask your opinion about this because we know that they need the Neutron for that, and then if they will like fly the Neutron for customers like SpaceX does, like the first launch, and then they reuse Neutron to launch their own assets into space, then the customers have already paid for almost all the hardware, and then Rocket Lab is basically paying for the refueling, refurbishing, and the launch. So I don't know what launch cost you can think with, but I don't know, maybe 5 million, maybe 10 million, depending on uh, how well they are advanced into the reusability. And then if they make their own satellites and it needs 40 satellites, I have like here I'm really in the dark because on the SDA contract, the 18 satellites, I think they were 20 million a piece, something like this.
Yeah, but those are very highly specialized satellites.
Exactly. Exactly. So what do you think if we would have to guess like their own house produced satellite would cost? Like 1 million, 2 million per satellite?
Ooh, I'm not really sure on that, but maybe to go from the start, I never really expected them to enter the telecom slash broadband market.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
And okay, one of them is of course, let's say, very capital intensive.
Yeah.
Only the richest companies on earth are currently doing that. But the other, I think, very important point is those are Neutron's customers, right? So imagine that they now announce, okay, we're going into
Yeah.
broadband.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then all the legacy telcos will be like, whoa, 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 whoa! This is another future competitor. So
Yeah.
then they will also be taking away a lot of potential business for Neutron. And I think the reason why they also have been so secretive about what is the next space application, it could either be something in Earth observation. I think that market is very crowded. Um, so it would be very interesting to see what they would do there. But again, Earth observation is a very big customer list for Electron. So if they would now announce, oh, we're going into Earth observation, I'm not saying they are going to, then of course all the clients now launching on Electron will think twice. So it's
Yeah. And it's also not a good business because you see all the like a lot of the Earth observation companies are public, right? And then I think Peter Beck even said it in an interview that he doesn't think it's a good business.
yeah, I think the one I think public comment he made, it's not about a space application per se, but that he really likes energy problems.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, 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 yeah.
but he also says, they're only going to, and that's the interesting thing, they're only going to enter existing markets because that's always Rocket Lab. They're usually the second mover in a market. They're never
Yeah.
the first bet the full company on this type of crazy idea. They're always, want a nicely established commercial market, and then they'll try to enter with bringing the service or product in a unique or discounted way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So just to go back to this question, like the reason why I was going into the numbers is because I was always worried that there is a new capital raise coming for Rocket Lab, because if Neutron is working and then they go into the space applications and they will come up with an applications that is thousands of satellites and launches, like there's no way that their cash is going to be enough for that, right? Because then it would be like a 5 to 10 billion investment, and where does that money come from, right? And then if the stock price is still as bad as it is now, then that's horrible for us shareholders, and I mean it's also not good for the company. But when Adam Spice started to go into that, like they see ways where it's only like maybe between 40 to 100 satellites, and I started thinking like, oh my god, like if they use Neutron and their own cost for the launches is between 5 to 10 million, and each satellite is 1 to 2 million, so 40 satellites is, let's say 80 million, and plus they can send up the 40 satellites with, I don't know, 2 or 3 launches, because you can fit a lot more into a Neutron. Then suddenly their space applications is only in like 100 million, and you add a huge part of the business. But there's because he didn't say what it was, there's no way to count with the revenue, right? Like I can count I get the idea that it's going to be an insanely capital smart solution that they are doing, but I don't know how to think with the revenue.
I also think the space application, not to be sound too pessimistic, but is still quite a lot of years away. I think that's more
Yeah.
around 2028, like 2029, 2030-ish time frame. Personally, that's what I expect. It could also come a lot sooner, of course, but yeah, That's my current expectation. But the thing which I find interesting is, yeah, there's a contradiction in the sense that they're not going to enter broadband. Their Earth observation, you cannot make money apparently.
Yeah.
But those are, I think, currently the only, to my knowledge, the proven commercial markets in low Earth orbit. And they said they only enter existing proven markets. So that's very interesting because they're, yeah, I think
Yeah, I
they're
see what you mean. I see what you mean. Yeah.
I think they're waiting on some advances in certain type of markets, maybe as well.
Yeah.
That they have their eyes set on something which is currently still a bit R&D-ish slash in the demonstration phase, but in 5-6 years could be a real market.
Yeah. Interesting. And okay, so we've been through the valuation, space systems, and I can see in the comments that almost on everybody's mind is Neutron. And what do you think is, because there is an ongoing theory, at least what I see on Twitter, that the reason why the stock price is so low is because everybody's waiting on Neutron. Wall Street is waiting on Neutron, and they're not even going to look at the stock until at least you have the engine test ready or until Neutron is flying. So do you think it's a major red flag that there is a delay in the Archimedes engine? And how would you view the stock if there is a 1-year delay in Neutron? Yeah.
Cool. It's a lot to cover. But before I start all of this, I think Neutron is very important for the business strategy, right? Of being an end-to-end space company. I think that's very important. But I wouldn't be, in my view, be very disappointed as long as they launch in 2025. I, of course, hope Q1 or maybe Q2 will be slightly disappointed with Q3 or Q4. But I think still that would be remarkably quick for a rocket program. So I'm not. I think as long as they can launch in 2025, I'm not super worried.
Okay, cool. And why do you think that the stock price is as low as it is? I see Manov San has commented that, of course, the stock price is low because Rocket Lab is pre-profitable and the interest rates are high. But I don't, because when we do the DCF, it's like you sort of, that's in your calculation, right? Like it shouldn't be. So you can think with that the interest rates are high because then you take a bigger this discount rate, or this WEWAC number gets adjusted with the interest rate. And the pre-profitable, it's like, yes, this is also a very interesting concept, because if they were not developing Neutron, as far as I understand, they would be a profitable company. Maybe they mean adjusted profitable. That's probably how they mean it. So you also can't say that they're, I mean, okay, I get it. They're not GAAP net profitable, but they're not so far from profitability.
No, in my model, what I also do, I break out the space systems business, because it's very interesting to track the revenue recognition for the MDA constellation and for the SDA. And then what you're actually seeing is that the space systems are going to really accelerate in 2024, 2025 significantly. So they already have a backlog which is going to lead to a revenue on ramp. But I think to comment, I think it's also sector, right? Because I also saw Spire. Spire announced they actually did it brilliantly. They first announced a partnership with NVIDIA. I think currently every company that announces a partnership with NVIDIA will be 20% up.
Yeah.
So what Rocket Lab should do, I guess they should just say they have a partnership with NVIDIA, And then in the end, it will not be about AI, but it will be about video cards for like the flight software. But then the
Yeah.
stock price will already be 30% higher, and then they can do another capital raise. No, just kidding. I think space is currently not a sexy sector. A lot of investors got burned on the spec, and there are still a lot of, I think, spec companies also publicly listed, like Astra, which are really not, uh, to my opinion, investable. But what makes a Rocket Lab very different is that they have a very unique business strategy. They're also very capital efficient, and that's very important also with related to the bankruptcy. If you read Ashley Vance's book, you also know Pete. He's quite a nimble guy, right? He doesn't like to spend a lot of money on big stuff. There's a lot of
Yeah.
stories in the book. I think one of them was them setting up the United States company and the branch in California, and he gave the U.S. Employees a lot of crazy deadlines, but he didn't give them money to build the proper machines in order to reach that deadline. So what is also undercovered or less covered is it is and I think not a lot of people realize that it is like a, a strength, a mode to be able to be operate very capital efficient.
Yeah.
So basically, I would say the difference between SpaceX, in my opinion, and Rocket Lab is SpaceX has almost unlimited money,
Yeah.
and they have very high execution. But it's to the credit of them, it's very difficult if you have a lot of money and the employees know the company is well capitalized to also have a very high execution, and that's pretty remarkable. And Rocket Lab, they have a very high execution. I would say almost on the level of SpaceX, but they don't have the finances of SpaceX. And then you have Blue Origin, who doesn't have the execution of SpaceX or Rocket Lab, but they do have a lot of money. But I would say money in itself is not a. It is very important, but it's not the most important thing, because you can down the line, when Rocket Lab will be a large company, they will run their operations in an asset light, let's say for a rocket company, asset light manner, with streamlined processes, and that's in the culture of the company. Well, at Blue Origin, for example, that's totally not the case.
Yeah, it's actually crazy that SpaceX is almost an anomaly on how well capitalized they are and how efficient they are. And I've seen on Twitter that some people made these charts of because like SpaceX is ahead of Rocket Lab, right? But they didn't start at the same time. So when you take Falcon 9 to an Electron to year 0, and you look at how many launches did they do in their year 1, year 2, so you sort of adjust for this, then if I remember well, Electron is scaling the same or maybe slightly better than Falcon 9 did at the same time in their life stage. So as you said, like Rocket Lab is really, like as Peter Beck says, like they have to think because they don't have money, and all the other companies like Blue Origin, super well capitalized, and it's like I don't understand how you can have I think they have 7,000 employees or 10,000 employees and have not reached the orbit yet, and I'm like, what do the employees do? Like I can't get it. And
Yeah.
and you have Relativity is also like they have not had a successful launch, and they have more employees than Rocket Lab, if I remember well, on their filings. And you go like, how?
Yeah, the thing what I always observe about Relativity is that in each interview of the CEO and CFO, they always seem to dish out some some hate on the Rocket Lab one way or the other. So
Yeah.
Rocket Lab must be doing something right, I think, in that case. And
Yeah.
I think to their credit, they are. So to maybe dive into it, slightly. You have the NASA Stennis Space Center, and I think I did a separate post on that. But basically, the outcome of that is that they were able to lease a brand new facility, never used, almost ready to go, for Archimedes engine testing, and they did it in a very capital efficient way. Also, of course, buying Virgin Orbit assets, the factory was very very efficient. So especially, I think what I find unique on Rocket Lab is that they execute both on the diehard engineering on the rockets, and they also execute on the business, on the finance side. So it's not only Peter Beck, of course, doing this. I think the management team in general deserves more credit broadly.
Yeah, yeah. And what is your timeline? So you have, do you feel comfortable disclosing how many shares you have in, or what's your target shares in Rocket Lab?
I am close to 25,000.
Wow, that's a very nice number.
Yeah. Well, not as much as you, I guess, Vince, but
yeah, I mean, I have had an accident, but let's see what happens. I'm a little bit on margin right now, and I'm trying to see how I can send out more money to take away the margin, to not. It's so weird. I wasn't planning to have this much shares, and then now that I have them, I'm like, I don't want to let go.
yeah, I can, if you see that number in your broker account and you fantasize about, okay, what will this be worth in 2020, 30? Then it's hard to, let go. I fully understand.
Yeah, exactly.
But
so what is your time horizon?
I guess I would say at least for now, I would say 10 years. But I have mentally built a check-in the sense that I think I'll reevaluate the stock on a continuous basis, of course, but really like on a fundamental basis in 2030, see how far they got. And also if I like the space application approach, I think I will like it. But just as a check-in, because I think there are two layers of growth in this company. The first is growing the space systems business, getting Neutron online and scaling it to cadence. That's step one. I think that will move the share price probably above $20. I think more. And then there's, I think, step two, and that's the space applications. And if I think it's very likely they will become very successful in the space applications, then there's a lot of runway for the stock even after that.
Yeah.
So that's how I evaluate it, basically in two steps.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on almost every point. Is there anything that you want to mention for the people who are watching, like some interesting thesis point or something that is worth to know?
Yeah, there's a lot to always to mention, but I think what I would like to point out is that for those doing the financial models, is that I think I didn't mention that at the beginning, but I always also look at the S curve. So when does the S curve of the company start? And I think with Rocket Lab, the S curve of the company is really starting to take off. I think if you just calculate based on the revenue backlog, the amount of revenue which will be recognized in 2024, it's already, I think, like a 50 to 70% increase compared to 2023. And there's a lot of room to also have a very nice growth trajectory in 2025, 2026, especially when Neutron comes online. So this is really, I think, a unique time to get in before everything is going to happen. And I still think the space system side, since everyone is so focused on Neutron, is still a bit undervalued in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, again, it's you're not taking a lot of risk buying here, as you said. It's the opportunity cost.
No, and I think last was it a couple of days ago, I also read an article. So why is Rocket Lab very competitive on the space system side? Is that, for example, like a Lockheed Martin, they produce part of the satellite in-house, but they also work with a lot of legacy subcontractors. Each subcontractor, they slap like a 40 to 30% markup on their part, selling it to Lockheed. So if you're all going to margin stack all those individual parts into one big satellite, then your satellite is going to be very expensive.
Yeah,
Well, if you're vertically integrated and do a lot of the stuff in-house, you prevent margin stacking, and then that allows you a more reliability about when you can deliver the satellite. It is more efficient for integration purposes, but very importantly, you can offer a lot of you can offer a lower cost satellite than your competitor, and that will, I think, really help them in competing for future SDA proliferated warfighter architecture satellite trenches.
yeah. Cool, Tim. I really enjoyed this conversation. Maybe we can
Sure,
do this more. Maybe you can come on Rocket Lab Weekly sometime if you want.
sure, that's fine. Always, I think in terms of my last words, I want to thank everyone. I was, of course, a bit new to the community, but I've been received with open arms. So thanks all of you. And I think with our collective research and enthusiasms, we can in this company really make the difference and beat Wall Street.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you, everyone. You can find Tim. His Twitter handle is in his name and also in the description box below. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel and see you all in the next video.